welcome back, everyone. We are very excited to do this podcast. So we had Franzelle on a previous podcast, Health 101. If you haven't watched that yet, you're also welcome to go back and watch that. And we had so much feedback about the podcast. We decided to do a series on the gut and restoring the gut. And what does it mean to restore the gut? What is gut health? What should we avoid? What should we actually eat? And something that I've realized in the last few weeks is just because you're eating healthy does not mean it is correct. There are many things that we assume are healthy things that aren't really good for our bodies. And so it's a reprogramming of how you see food and how you see your body. And Franzelle has taught me so much, so I'm very excited. So Franzelle, just quickly tell us, how did this journey with the gut start for you personally?
Okay, so as I said last time, I've always struggled with high fever, intense high fever, and stomach problems. I used to get a lot of what do you call it?
Okay,
like viral infections, infections where you stomach viruses. Yeah, I thought that was normal. When I had my first child, and she started eating she was a very colicky baby. So I actually, if looking back, I should have known that her gut was affected. But when she was 5 years old, she started developing symptoms. She would eat vinegar and she would get fever at night, body aches and pains. Banana, I had a doctor. I did some tests and she was sensitive to bananas and avocados, dairy and wheat, even though we were wheat free from when she was born. And then I started taking the things out, but then it felt like now I must just take more and more stuff out. She's getting sensitive for more and more things, and she would just it would really be at night. She would vomit. She would get extreme cramps. If she ate like droewors, which is a South African dried meat with vinegar, she would be sick. So then I read on about gut health on Dr. McCullough. He talked about the GAPS, gut and psychology syndrome. It is a Russian neurologist that she actually wanted to help her child recover from autism. She did everything medically that she could to help him, but she couldn't get him to function better. So she did research and she had this whole diet on the gut, what you should eat, what you should leave out to restore the gut. So then my husband and I decided, okay, we're going to put the whole family on this. We also just adopted a little girl that was also always runny nose and, having frequent colds and things. So her immune system wasn't functioning optimally. And then everyone went on this GAPS diet. So the gut also, if people struggles with depression, for example, what this whole GAPS diet is about is a lot of your hormones are absorbed in the gut. It goes directly, if there's not enough serotonin, for example, there's not enough to go to your brain and your serotonin levels are low, so you struggle with depression. So a lot of the emotional symptoms we're also experiencing can be directly linked to your gut, or even anger outbursts, or all that type of things where you emotionally, there's a lot of things that get restored with the gut when you, even emotional things that get sorted out. So what the diet was about is you had to eat bone broths, drink bone broths and soup. At the beginning, start with meat and vegetables only. You had to cut out all starches and grains, pulses. and just to give the gut a time to breathe and to just heal. And then you could add, there were stages, 5 stages, then you can add different things. But you basically had to be off of grains for quite a while. Looking back, I, however, feel it is a lot of work. The GAPS diet is I had to do so much research, and I'm glad we did it. It was good for me also to develop self-discipline in eating and in making my own food. You had to do everything yourself. You couldn't buy there was almost nothing you could buy. So, but our energy levels increased. My daughter was able to eat dairy, which she would get very sick on, avos and bananas, everything she could eat again. I do, however, feel that we were on it for too long. And what happens is your gut has a microbiome, and you need to support the microbiome. So if you are not eating pulses for a long time, and you are introducing the pulses, it gets quite tricky, because then you think, oh no, I'm reacting, but it's actually just your gut bacteria that's almost
Adjusting.
died off. Yeah, and they have to develop again. So I wouldn't suggest anyone to go on this for more than 6 months. And even after 4 weeks, I would start introducing and seeing how the body reacts to certain foods. I do, however, feel there are easier ways to restore the gut. And also because fear and anxiety are directly linked to how your gut functions. So to be able to work on your emotional things by connecting to your creator, the one who made you. He's the one who heals all your diseases. And I feel that we want to fix things in the natural, but in the spiritual, we are not in alignment. Yeah. And there's certain things he put in the word, ways that we should live. For example, resting 1 day a week. We're not doing that. You're pushing your bodies, we're pushing our children. So it causes stress. Stress exactly has a detrimental effect on the gut. Yes. I'm not saying stress is bad always. It's a good thing. A lot of times it helps you to do things, but if it's taken too far. Yeah.
Yes. So I actually want to just say that I think this is very important, is that we've come so accustomed to always working, always being perfect, doing the work, doing this, doing that, that so many people, when I tell them you have to rest, they say to me, I don't know how. So that's always very interesting for me, that that we as a society have moved so far away from what we were created to be. Yes. We were created to do all of these things, but we also were created to rest. And and people don't even, if I talk to people, they don't even sleep 8 hours a night, and then I think to myself, your body really needs that rest. So what people think, and my job and my finances and doing this and that has become more important than your body. And it's not in an unhealthy, selfish way, but just realizing that you need to take care of your meat box, because your soul lives in it. And if the meat box is not happy, your soul will be very unhappy.
Yeah, so, for example, even eating, even sleeping less makes you want to eat more.
Yes.
So
to get your energy levels up.
Yes, you want to eat, and you want to eat carbs, you want to eat chocolates. So everything has an effect. The way we're living has an effect on what we're doing to our bodies. And our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. So we need to, we need to live a way that's honoring Him. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's very important. And I think something that you said that I don't think many people are aware of the fact that that your emotions are directly linked to your gut. Your the fact that you said if your serotonin needs to be reabsorbed in the gut, and if the gut is unhappy, then your serotonin will not be reabsorbed, and you will get anxious, you will get overwhelmed, you will get depressed. And so many people do not realize that these symptoms that they're having are actually symptoms of an unhealthy gut. They think it's just it's symptoms from only overworking or having too much pressure at work and not sleeping enough. But yes, that's true. But it's linked to your gut. The gut is the central thing that's the common denominator, you know. And so you did the GAPS diet, and then you started reintroducing things that they didn't that you took out. You slowly started reintroducing that. So we have the GAPS diet. I have a link for it that will be on the resources page, and that we will share, and we will then so that people can go and follow the GAPS diet and see how it's done. So after you do the GAPS diet, what is and you start reintroducing new foods into the system and into the body. Obviously, the GAPS is not the only thing that restores the gut. You also do other things to restore the gut.
Yeah. So what I would recommend, actually, later on, we discovered that the autoimmune paleo diet it's basically the same as the GAPS, but it's much easier. You don't have to cook all the food. You start with raw food from the start. You also take out dairy, because the GAPS introduced dairy at the beginning. And especially people with like Hashimoto's, or that's an autoimmune disease, the dairy is a trigger. So a lot of times they can't get the antibodies down with dairy.
So let's just maybe also say Hashimoto's is a thyroid problem.
Yes,
the under-functioning thyroid.
Yeah.
And so I know dairy and eggs are reacting things for people with any type of thyroid problem. So okay.
So, but what I would just, we're all living very busily. So my first focus would be take out the chemicals, take out the sugar, the wheat, and the processed dairy, definitely processed dairy. If you can't live without, you feel like you can't live without it at the moment, try and get unprocessed dairy. Because the dairy has been, there's been bleach added to make the milk white. There's a lot of times the animals are sick, and they just take all the milk with pus in it, and they just it just gets really gross. So you have to get your dairy from a place where you can trust the people. If it's been processed on a high temperature, the protein gets turned around and becomes carcinogenic. So
is that during the process of pasteurizing?
Pasteurizing, yeah. Okay. So it causes the protein to become carcinogenic. So basically, you're drinking poison.
Yes. It's so interesting. I actually listened to another podcast yesterday of a guy where he spoke, and he said they found so many carcinogenic in between 70 and 80% of all takeaway companies. And they the FDA then says that it's below the level that they find troublesome. But the fact of the matter is, who funds the FDA? It's the same companies that are, so it we don't realize that the people that we think are managing what goes in and out of our food, you think they would be on your side, but actually they are not at all. They are just filling their pockets sometimes.
And also, maybe if it's one time you're eating that in a year, your body can process it. But think of all the chemicals we are getting in currently. It's the air we're breathing is filled with with the gases.
Colorants,
You know,
foods,
colorants in
preservatives.
foods. Yeah, and I mean, that is not actually, there's so much stuff has been taken out, bread in the shop. The healthy things have been taken out of the grains and the flour. So you're basically just eating gluten.
Yes.
It's too much for your body. A lot of times people can still handle a little bit of gluten if it's the fermented sourdough and it's non-GMO. And that's the other thing. All the genetically modified foods has a direct influence on the gut. I've heard of a doctor in Europe that they did tests on over 5,000 patients that took out genetically modified food, and immediately they had an instant relief in their gut health after a month. Well, after the first week, I think the gut was working better, and then, you know, it just taking out genetically modified food. In South Africa, it's usually the food that is created in bulk. That is, so it's wheat, it's corn. If it doesn't say non-GMO corn, I wouldn't eat it. Organic, non-GMO.
And that's difficult to find because I haven't been able, and I mean, I live in Johannesburg, so I haven't been able to find any corn products that say non-GMO. You know, and we used to eat a lot of corn. I love corn. And it was such a shock to me to realize that wheat and corn is, and that you're actually not allergic to the gluten. You're allergic to the GMO aspect of it and the pesticides that they put on the plants. And so that's actually, and I actually found this out way before me and you connected. I spoke to my sister and she was the one that told me that you're actually not allergic to the gluten, you're allergic to the pesticides and the genetic manipulation. And when you, she also said it's shown that when people travel to other areas and they get there, they don't, they don't have that same reaction to gluten. They can eat the gluten from another country, and that's because the pesticides are different and the manipulation is different. So it was so interesting for me.
So in Europe, they're very strict about, you know, the genetically modified food. In South Africa, we can't really, we wouldn't know. So, it's difficult to know, but usually the soya and, you know, the bulk products, they are usually genetically modified.
Yes. And so even if you think now I'm getting off of my wheat, I'm replacing my dairy with soya milk, I mean, then in the end, it's your soy milk is also GMO, and so you'll just have other reactions. Your body might not immediately have it because it also needs to, you know, build up that resistance. But and so you spoke earlier about children and chemicals. If you can maybe talk about that and just maybe mention some things that you get chemicals in. Are you speaking about like sweets where they have colorants in them? And if you can maybe just explain that a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, all of the heavily sugar laden, you know, sweets, and they all have flavorants and colorants, chocolates. I usually don't really buy, there is a chocolate in Teskem, what is the name, Oscar, health, something connection, I must just write it down. To go look at them, but there's little chocolate Oscar, and they just have coconut blossom, sugar and cocoa and things in there if you really want to buy a treat. But the flavorants and the colorants, especially with children suffering with autism, anxiety, anger issues, ADHD. If they eat it, you see a direct effect on them just after that. Even my children picked it up in the gymnastics class. Some of the people that drank Coke and how they reacted after they were drinking it, they would come tell me, this child just went like, you know, so
crazy.
Just reacted so weird. Yeah, the child reacted so weird, and that he just had this. So it is actually it makes you wonder, you know, the outbursts you're getting, the anxiety attacks. Is it the food you're consuming? Is it your emotional system? everything is so intertwined and connected. For example, the chemicals, if your liver can't process or is too full of toxins, then it can't process, and that goes to the gut, and it affects the gut, and it affects the kidneys. We're all intertwined. So yeah.
I think something that that we also spoke about earlier is that your eldest daughter, when you gave birth to her, and she first of all had colic. You know, that's so very interesting, because I did an entire series on epigenetic markers and how obviously our genetic material is it's not something we can change. You are born with the genetics that you have, but your environment does make markers on your genes. And so if your environment throughout your life was one of allergy and gut issues, and the marker wasn't removed before you conceived your first child, then the possibilities are 50-50, like just with eye color or whatever else, that she would have inherited that epigenetic marker for gut sensitivity. And so I said in that course as well, it's like a snowball effect. Every generation, you can sort of see it getting worse. And, you know, that's why you as a parent might struggle with mild anxiety. It's manageable. You every now and again might have a little fit, and it comes from your gut. Now you have your child. Your child then inherits your anxiety, your sensitivity in the gut. And but no one changes the environmental factor that made it that way in the first place. And that is what we put into our mouths. And just, you know, so today we're talking very much about physically restoring the gut and physical things you can do. You know, we'll later on, because you have an amazing spiritual journey that also links to this. And I think we'll do that in the next podcast. But just how your environment and your environmental factors that you change, how they can affect you. And so I just want to thank you so very much for having this session with us today. And we appreciate your knowledge and sharing with us. And we're looking forward to doing this journey with you of restoring the gut. I think we touched on everything a little bit today, and we can go deeper, and we'll also see. So if any one of you who's listening has any feedback, please send your feedback so that we can talk about these things and answer them. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. Okay.
Okay, thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.